4 goals, a new position for a player that used to be one thing and now he might be something else, and a debut for a new player. So there are some things to talk about, believe it or not, after Barcelona's 4-0 win over Elche. So let's get into it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 4-0 win over Elche in the Liga. Only Elche. This is a bit of a disclaimer as our first headline because, it does affect how we analyze this match because Elche is not the same thing as a Champions League side, nor is even the same thing as a top 10 or top half side in the Liga. What Barcelona did against Elche, very much like when Ferran Torres went prime Garinca against Cadiz. I don't know how much we can really read into this stuff, but we're going to try our best. Because going into the game, Barcelona, as a Liga leaders, they had 12 points more than the second place team. Elche, meanwhile, were last place in the Liga. Well, they still are. Basically a Segunda Division side at this point. And they had 13 points less than 19th place. So I'll do that again. That Barcelona's lead in the Liga over second place is in double digits the same way that Elche is in 20th place behind 19th in the relegation fight. Not only that, but Barcelona have collected more than 5 times the number of points that Elche have in this season. That's 71-13, while Elche have conceded 5 more times the number of goals that Barcelona have in the Liga this season, 55-9. And yes, while that's a compliment, that big 9 to Barcelona that I'm probably going to talk more about in the podcast tomorrow when we get into the nuances of this game and the issues that Barcelona may have had, I feel like, I'm giving it away. These 5 headlines are going to be largely positive, I guess, to say. But for Elche, things are very negative this season. They know they're going down. The latest coach was probably brought on because they're going down. So yes, unfortunately, it is only Elche. And while I do generally give the opponents for Barcelona some credit here, I can't do it for lowly Elche. Headline 2 is Eric Garcia's tryout. I think this really actually should be the biggest headline here. I know the goals game, but again, because I think we're going to skew that against Elche, the one new novel idea we have is Eric Garcia at the pivot position. And when I say pivot, well, he actually did play kind of a double pivot with Sergio Roberto. And I'm going to have to actually watch this game a second time before the podcast, which is going to come out tomorrow, before I really give a verdict on Eric Garcia. And again, it is skewed slightly because it was Elche. I wondered at points in that game if his teammates entirely trusted him with his new position, and maybe that was by design though. The back line and Ter Stegen were looking to bypass the midfield completely, so we didn't really see that much build up through Eric. But we did see Eric positioning himself to drag that first line of Elche forwards to create space for the long balls from Araujo, who did really well with that, and Koundé and Ter Stegen. And this is often what Xavi does do against low blocks. So I think it would be more useful to kind of compare Eric Garcia's performance with the Sergio Busquets' performances against the teams when they kind of dominate in this fashion. So I'll have to do some deeper digging on that. But as I said, this is what Xavi does against those low blocks regardless. So I think it is quite by design, having 2 deep-lying playmakers to draw out pressure, then frequently finding players running into the half spaces or in those central channels. And it did help Eric Garcia in this game as well because Gabi was excellent. The free-running midfield role in front of Roberto and Eric fully supported him today because he was able to kind of show his quality and show his pure talent with Pedri not in the lineup and also not doing a job, if you will, for Busquets behind him because against Elche he didn't have to. He created the most chances, that being Gabi, completed the most dribbles and won the most duels with 11 in the game. Gabi was, as I said, excellent here. And then Roberto also did a really good job handling the different pressure that Elche was trying to throw out in certain moments. And for Sergio Roberto to ask him to kind of be that dynamic Frankie de Jong position, if you're going to ask Eric Garcia to be Busquets, I thought Roberto was a bit more dynamic in midfield than he usually is. His verticality was kind of useful to, we'll say, bring Eric Garcia's best out. If Eric Garcia was going to be more stationary, then that meant Roberto was going to have to run. And he did do that job, and I think even defensively, Sergio Roberto had a good day. Headline 3 is breaking the drought. This is all about Lewandowski, and it is a reminder, too, that Lewandowski, while his goal-scoring droughts never really worry me per se, certainly his World Cup and post-World Cup form, I think it was something that Barca fans should be considering, because if Barca are to win the Copa del Rey, especially on Wednesday, it's helpful if Lewandowski puts the ball in the back of the net. As I've said many times, Lewandowski scoring goals and Ter Stegen coming up big in the first half of the Liga is what helped Barcelona get this lead. And to close out the Liga season, it'd be helpful if Lewandowski could keep scoring goals. So those scoring numbers lately, he had gone 3 consecutive games without a goal in the Liga for the second time. But the bigger thing is he hadn't gone 5 games, counting Barca and Poland over the break, without scoring in 5 years. So it actually was kind of a drought numerically. And I do give credit on that first goal to Alba for helping him break that drought, aiming for Araujo the whole way. Araujo knocking it down for Lewandowski, wonderfully executed set piece. Plan A was probably Araujo on net, but that knockdown was so good that maybe that was the plan A, and I think Xavi would tongue-in-cheek say that both were plan A. But even after that goal, I felt like it wasn't done just yet, that we'll say drought or breaking the dam open, because he still missed one near the end of the first half that probably would have put the game away. But fortunately, the second did come. Within seconds of Elche making changes, Koundé stepped centrally and high to make the tackle, and with some help from Gabi, though I guess Gabi did more, he did win the tackle. Anyway, it went right to Lewandowski, and he should have scored that one. I think that is one you have to put in the net. Lewandowski, nice drag to get the goalkeeper committed to one side. Almost got him in trouble, but he finished it well. And yeah, again, 2 goals against Elche doesn't mean that Lewandowski has got off the snide. But Lewandowski, whether you score him against Elche or you score him against Real Madrid, those are the same 3 points that win the Liga, as I've been saying all season long. Headline 4, meaning behind those goals. I already talked about with Lewandowski, and I think it rings double or triple for Ansu Fati and Ferran Torres, asking how much meaning can we put into the goals that they scored today? Because it is, lowly Elche. And it is almost unfair to just Ansu Fati because he did struggle in that first half. So if you struggle against Elche, does that matter more than scoring a goal against Elche? That was still a decent goal that he scored. It was his first since October, so it's a really monumental goal for him to put in the back of the net. But when you look at that first half performance, you go, well, I think it's a little bit of both. And it should be. That first half, Ansu was as lost as he's been this season. He had his 1 shot blocked. He had 13 passes completed, 0 shots on target, 0 dribbles attempted, 0 key passes, 0 for 2 on his crosses, 0 long balls, 0 for 3 on his ground duels, and he lost possession 9 times. He had a few better moments in the second half, and Elche did help him out by playing some terrible transition defense, and a good job by Ferran Torres, by the way, with that pass to set Ansu Fati in transition. But I do hope that that one moment, I'd say the one great moment from Ansu in this game, can galvanize him, and he can kind of put all the negative moments behind him, because again, I think this game was still somehow more negative than positive. But again, as you remember, this is the first time ever, because of COVID and injuries and the like, that Ansu Fati has ever played for Barcelona in the month of April even. And again, the negativity that surrounded him with his father and everything, this goal was really important. And I'm going to contradict it immediately, that I do kind of put more value on the goal scored than the negative stuff, but I think the negative stuff is still going to be in our minds. For Ferran Torres, it's kind of the same thing, though I actually think he had a better average performance, if you will, even if the goal wasn't as good as Ansu's. The goal that Ferran Torres did score was helpful, though. The goal by Ferran Torres was a well-placed shot. It was a good job by Kessie and Ansu to open up the shooting lanes for him, and the diagonal ball from Lewandowski should not be overlooked. And for Ferran Torres, this was his first goal in quite a few games as well, so good for him to find the back of the net. And those two, who knows about Rafinha, who knows about Dembele, they could prove to be important as Barcelona do look to close out La Liga. And headline 5 is youngsters denied. I'm actually going to zag a little bit from where I usually stand with the youngsters, believe it or not. I'm actually going to kind of take Xavi's side on this one, because I know a lot of people were frustrated that they didn't see any of Alarcon or Estanis Pedrola, who had both made their first team debuts earlier this season. And you wanted to see more of Pablo Torre and Aleix Garrido in his debut. But I am actually, again, going to defend Xavi here just a little bit, because as someone who does usually advocate for the kids, I'm not really that bothered this time around, because I actually think that the main reason that Xavi didn't have more of these kids in that match is that he does want this team to take pride in that clean sheet. And there were some worrisome moments, and I'm not putting it on those kids, but I think he just doesn't trust teenagers to close out. Though I do think Pablo Torre's 15 minutes were pretty much pre-planned. I think even if Barcelona up 1-0 or 2-0 or 2-1, I still think Pablo Torre is going to get those 15 minutes. I think Xavi did say I'm going to give those to you against Elche, but that's a different point for a different time. But as I said, I think for those youngsters, while the solidity of the team doesn't break, I think get a little bit more wide open. They don't make the tackles or they don't run the way that Gabi does, of course, and it's good to get Gabi a little bit of rest, but Xavi does want to close out this season with making history. He wants to show that this team is as dominant as humanly possible. But teenagers, and yeah, there's Balde and Gabi, and there are exceptions, of course, but new teenagers, if you will, that have not already had their shot, may not let you do that. And for Estanis, who made his debut earlier this season, and for Garrido, even if he had not come off the bench, just making the first team bench, taking in the ambiance, taking in the atmosphere, going through the training warm-up. I mean, he said it, that being Aleix Garrido in the postgame, that what a day it was. Just thinking, is today the day? Am I going to make my debut? And everything that goes into all those feelings around it. Of course, the kid looked very nervous. He's a teenager. In the first few minutes he was on the field, you could see that Kessie and Lewandowski were kind of pointing him in the right direction, saying, hey, move out of that space, move over there, and you'll receive the ball. And clearly you could see that once he got that first touch, I think it went out of bounds, took a little bit of pressure off him. And then when he received the ball in the final third, you could see that he looked a lot more natural, and that's what he needed. He needed that exhale. But let's say that the first moment he touches the ball, it doesn't go well. And that being Xavi put him on the 60th minute, right? And Elche are building power and gaining momentum because they're desperate to show anything in this season at home. And so Aleix Garrido winds up being on the receiving end of a debut that maybe he can't take to the stars like he wants to. An immediate contradiction that you should expect from me here. If I had seen more of those youngsters, it would give me more to talk about with them. I would have been excited to see these kids that I have seen since they were at the U16 level coming up. And for Garrido especially, he was kind of that other midfielder with Gabi in the U16 when Gabi was still playing up a level. And so I did kind of want to see more of Garrido. It's interesting. And I do hope to see him more in the future. But again, Xavi, I think, was prioritizing the clean sheet. Barcelona got it, and 9 goals still conceded. Even if it was against Elche, that number is still what's impressive to me. There's a lot more that we have to talk about. We're going to do more on Ansu tomorrow on the podcast, and more on Eric Garcia especially. I only did a minute or two here. So expect that there are going to be talking points, and then we have to preview El Clasico as well on Wednesday, because that is a big game in the second leg of the Copa del Rey semifinal. So I hope to see you here for that. Well, the podcast tomorrow, actually. Then we'll see if El Clasico, those 5 headlines, podcast, all that stuff later in the week. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.